Welcome back, guys. My name is Shayda from the 11th Apartment blog, and this is part 2 of my tutorial on block printing, stamp carving, and printmaking. In this video, we'll be doing the actual inking and printing of our stamps. If you haven't seen the first part of this video, check out my channel for the video titled Printmaking Part 1, Design and Carve Your Stamp. Or if you already know all about block printing and stamp carving, join me now and we're going to go through making an inking plate, inking your stamp, and making pretty things. Let's get started. So here's the stamp that I carved in part 1 of the video. You can see it's been carved on thick block cutting or printmaking or stamp carving material. And so it's fine on its own. It doesn't need to be mounted because of how thick the material is. So it's been carved out and I've got 2 pieces that fit together, and that's what we'll be printing today. But we're also going to print some other stuff just so we can talk about printing and everything that entails. I'll show you quickly a few other materials that I've created. So this one here is a stamp that I made using a thinner printmaking sheet that I showed you in part 1. One of the thin sheets. Then I've mounted it on white craft foam, and then I've mounted that on a stamp handle I made out of wood and cabinetry knobs. So those are quite cool. Something like this I would use to make greeting cards or invitations. Designs like the anchor and the diamond are great for doing wrapping paper. They're great for doing pattern making and printmaking in that way, making gift wrap. Or you could even do fabric printing with those. And then some of these here, like the flowers, I use that more again for greeting cards. This is a rose stamp I made last year for my rose petal jelly. So when I do the canning, I use this stamp to make all my labels. And that's a really easy way to do a lot of labels. And that you can see is just mounted on a wooden block. And I get those at the craft store. You could find them at a hardware store. So those are really fun to print. Here's another one. This is, again, on a thicker piece of printing material. This is the Speedy Carve or the Speedy Cut from Speedball, and I've just got the stamp and I don't have to mount it because it's sturdy, and I've used that to do a Valentine's Day card, just doing the je t'aime. All right, so those are some of the printmaking materials that I've carved. Now let's talk about our supplies. We're going to be using print or block printing ink, and that's what it's called, and it's from Speedball. It comes in a whole range of colors, and you can get those at art and craft stores. And then we'll be using a printing plate or an inking plate, and for that all I'm using is a piece of glass that I've taken out of a picture frame. Just want to be sure if you do that it's not too cheap and thin. Then I have my hard rubber brayer, and that's from Speedball as well, and that helps me to move all the ink around. Finally, here I've got some nice white cardstock, but you could experiment with all different kinds of papers. And then I've got another brayer here to help me press the stamp into the paper, but you don't need one of those. You can use a wooden spoon, or you can just use your hand, so not necessary. So let's ink up the plate. I'm going to use some blue ink. And what you really don't want is to put too much ink on the plate. Too much ink, you're gonna lose control of it, and there's just nothing you can do if you have too much. You can always add more. And then we're gonna start moving it around like this. And you just wanna create a nice, smooth surface that's where the ink is all sort of the same level. So you're not gonna have high peaks and then shallow areas. You want a nice even coating of ink on the inking plate. And that's sort of the sound you want when it's ready to go on the stamp. It's just a little bit tacky with small peaks, and you'll get a feel for that. You'll understand soon enough what's too much ink, what's not enough ink. Let's get these out of our way. And we're gonna start by inking the bottom piece, and we'll put it on the page first. And we're just gonna go over it like this, getting lots of ink on our design. Oops. Okay. And then I'm going to transfer this onto my paper, my nice piece of white cardstock. Just carefully pressing down gently, and then I'm going to go over it with the brayer. And then I'm going to leave it there because this is a two-part stamp. And I will ink up the next portion here. Okay, now we're going to take this second portion and fit it into place with the other stamp. All right, let's lift up our design, or our stamp, and see what the design looks like. So far, so good. There we go. I think it looks great. We can see we have a few little trouble areas, places where there might be a little bit of block still to carve out. But overall, I think it looks really good. I think it turned out just great. And that's something that we'll now be able to use for, you know, quote design. And you could print up tons of these and do hand lettering projects in the middle of them, and it would look so pretty, and you won't have to go through the trouble of designing and drawing out a wreath every time you want to do a wreath quote. So I think this is a really cool way to enhance your lettering projects. All right, let's print some more stuff. So let's do this one more time, but this time we're going to mix colors. And I'm going to do a nice dark purple, which I think will be really pretty for this floral design. And mixing colors is not hard, because when you're trying to get a smooth surface of ink on the inking plate, you can't help but mix those inks together. So just put a little squeeze of each. Remember, it's better to have to add more than to have too much ink on your plate. And you're just going to start rolling the brayer across them, trying to get a smooth inking surface, but also trying to make sure that you have an even mix of color. So even color, even surface. When you've achieved that, then it's time to put that ink onto your stamp and then put that stamp onto the page. Remember to press down firmly but gently. You want it to sort of stick to the page a little bit so that it doesn't move, and the ink will stick if you press firmly. And then once you've achieved that, then go over it gently but firmly with the rubber brayer. Okay, let's lift this up and see how it looks. I think this is going to be really nice, and do be careful that you keep your hands clean. That's probably the #1 way that I ruin most of my good prints, is just painted fingerprints. An inevitable part of the printmaking process is having unsuccessful prints. So don't feel bad if you print 5 and 2 are just not very good. And here are a few of my examples of just prints that just didn't turn out perfectly. And the culprit of a poor print is often too much or too little ink. And when you have too much ink on the plate and on your brayer, it causes a thick sort of sticky coat of ink that's not smooth to be transferred onto your stamp. And then that ink, it's too thick, so it won't stick to the page, and the stamp will actually move and wiggle on the page, and it just looks bad. And then of course, too little ink, as you can see here. It's just, you know, you'll have white areas or areas where the print hasn't come through properly. So having a good inking plate is so important. So we're going to go over this one more time. Here's a close-up of me inking the plate. You can sort of hear what that sounds like, that nice smooth coat. And then once you transfer it to the page, it's important to press down firmly and gently with your hands. Get those stamps to stick to the page. Then when you go over them with the brayer, you don't have to worry about them moving or shifting in any way, because that equals disaster. And then just pull them off gently and check out your awesome print. I'll end today's tutorial by showing you how I print some of these other stamps that I made previously, and also how I print on watercolor paper. I'm using cold pressed watercolor paper for its texture. It just has such a lovely look to it. And I'm going to print this floral stamp to begin in a nice jet black ink. So I'm just prepping my inking plate as usual, and then I take the stamp and I just hold it in my hand and carefully apply the printing ink. And it goes pretty well, and of course these smaller stamps are easier to ink. You're less likely to miss a spot. And then I'll take this nice piece of textured watercolor paper and I'm just going to press down with the stamp firmly, really as hard as I can. You need to apply a lot of pressure to the stamp, especially when you're printing onto textured paper like cold pressed watercolor. There we go, it looks good. Okay, the next one I'm going to do is this cute little whale. This is one of my favorite stamps and it was a really easy carve. So I'm just applying that same nice black ink using the same paper. And when I press down, I press firmly as I said, and I like to wiggle the stamp around a little too, just applying pressure, making sure that every part of that stamp is touching the page and is transferring its ink. There we go, that one turned out really nice too. All right, that's it for today, guys. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, please hit like and consider subscribing to my channel. And for all of you faithful subscribers out there who are looking for more hand lettering videos, I hear you. And next week we're going to be tackling a really cute font that I've been working on for a little while now. So I hope I will see you next Friday for that tutorial. In the meantime, if you're looking for more of the 11th apartment, head over to my blog. See you next Friday.